You got it.
Okay, it is now 7:04 and we will call tonight's Board of Finance budget workshop to order at that time. We're gonna start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to
to
the
the
republic
republic for which it
for which it
stands,
stands, one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
and
liberty and justice
justice
for all. Thank you, everybody. As we know, we are going to, discuss the budget tonight. Kim just said she was going to be joining, so I think she'll be coming on soon. So Eric, do you want to go ahead and we'll move to agenda item 2, which is public speak. Do you mind doing that? Is that how that goes?
Yep. So of the members at large, the only one present seems to be Linda Fish. Linda Fish
I'm all set.
And Creme
Okay.
too, right? Yeah.
and Wally, do you want to say anything other than discuss the discussion of the fire commission budget, which will be at its agenda item?
No, I'll wait for that.
Okay. That's public speak.
May I speak?
And Creme is here, Eric.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Wrong board
Yeah.
board meeting.
But-
I
Wrong
mean,
meeting,
here-
sorry.
I'm here as the public, a member of the public, not representing the Board of Selectmen. I've been thinking about how does each expense in the budget benefit the town and the residents of Andover? Thinking about it more, I know that the Board of Selectmen presented the budget to you a few weeks back, but I've changed my mind on a few things. I just want to state that. Number one, I feel that a part-time community and senior center director might be better than the full-time. If we make the position full-time, the director would be tasked with many roles currently filled by volunteers and could be continuing that way. Can we really afford paying the full-time for that? 2, does the purchase of a new roadside mower make sense? I know that's probably not next year's budget, but other things to do with equipment, I think we could spend less if we were repairing and or renting equipment that's used infrequently. After researching expenses more since that meeting for the selectmen, I would, if I had the chance, change my vote to no for the purchase of the new roadside mower. And 3, I do continue to support our town planner. This is an excellent example of forward thinking, which will benefit our town in the future. So that's just some of my thoughts on the budget. I know that you're down to doing the fire department today, but I just wanted to get a chance to say my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Sorry
Thank
for
you.
leaving you out. My apologies.
We appreciate your comments. Eric, I know it's not on the agenda, but should I call to Wally now and ask him or?
Wally is on the agenda. It's item A, fire department budget.
Oh, because we added it? Sorry, did I miss that? Okay,
Not on my budget.
it's not on my agenda. I printed it so I could follow it, so no
I
problem.
just got it off the website.
I just
I
read it off
got
the
it
website.
emailed to me from Kate, so maybe I printed it. It doesn't matter. We're glad he's
Okay,
here.
but-
We wanted to discuss the budget with him.
Hmm.
Wally, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Eric said that Eric, did you say you got the budget, the breakdown, the spreadsheet emailed to you today?
I did. And I passed it off to you, but I passed it off very late because I took the day off.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I mean, we'll take a look tomorrow. I was hoping to have some questions, for Wally, so in my preparation, but what we can do is maybe so what I'd like to do, has it always been presented as a one-line item in the budget, Eric?
Yes, the
Okay,
fire commission budget is a single line item typically.
yeah. So we know that it was kind of a significant, ask this year, a raise. We understand, different things are happening. So we appreciate you coming on, maybe Wally, and explaining it. Are you able to share that with us now, Eric? And we'll all take a look together. And
I
then if we
certainly
have,
can, and I'm admitting Kim now. So I
Oh,
will share
yay.
my screen and bring that up on the screen.
okay, she was having difficulty. That's what she was.
Okay, so you should be seeing it now, hopefully.
Yep, don't mind
And
me.
I'll
I've
make
got
it a
it
little
close.
bigger.
Perfect. Thank you for my eyesight. So if we all just take a quick minute and look it over, and then if anyone has specific questions for Wally, we can open the floor to do that. Eric, while everybody's reading it and Wally as well, I'm seeing that big increase for the firefighting supplies with the gear. I don't know, it's hard, 47% increase. I don't know how much of the dollar amount that is. Would Wally?
I
do
got
you-
that in front of me. I thought I sent Eric the other paperwork with the actual numbers,
Yeah.
but
Well-
I can get that to him tomorrow. I'm
Mhm.
almost certain I sent it to him back in the fall, but uh, protective clothing. Yeah, firefighting supplies is the one I think you were talking about.
Oh,
We incre-
yes, yeah.
We increased that by $6,400. Basically, everything that we buy for the fire department has gone up 10, 15, 20% in the past 3 years. And there's a lead time on everything that we buy. Hose has gone up, turnout gear has gone up. The services that we need to have done annually, they've gone up. And the other thing with any service that's done at the firehouse, we're being charged a fuel cost for anybody to come out and do the work. So basically, we're looking for a 9% total increase in the budget, or a dollar amount of $14,400. And that's primarily due to inflation, that everything has gone up. Electricity is scheduled to go up again, propane's gone up, gas and diesel's gone up. And anything that we buy basically has gone up in price.
Mhm. No, we appreciate you explaining that. We didn't have the dollar amount of what the percentage would be. And we'll take a look at it. I don't know if anyone has, and forgive me, I'm gonna sound really naive with this, just because you're here and because I'm interested. How many, like, I know this is a fire commission, we have a fire commissioner, and we have a whole team of volunteers that protects our town.
Correct.
So does this have to do with the number of people, of volunteers too? I know this is equipment, like the hoses and things like that, but training, new firefighters taking certificate classes, additional, right? I mean, understanding, and Eric had talked about, it's not, in the future, maybe we won't have as many volunteers as, we have, and it's not something that, how many volunteers do you have now, Wally? Just so I have an idea.
It's approximately 35 people that are
Wow.
active right now.
Mhm.
And you talk about having less in the future. That's something you've got to think about long and hard, because somewhere down the road, you're probably going to have to hire paid personnel for the daytime coverage. A number of towns around us have gone to that. We're not in that position yet,
Mhm.
but it's something that may be coming down the road.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm happy to hear that there's 35 that give their service to the town, and I understand. I just didn't know, I mean, I see the nice firehouse there, and I'm glad that Andover has that. I just didn't understand the whole workings of it. And while you were here, I mean, I hope we keep having volunteers. And so are there active people in there during the day? Like, are there people at that firehouse during the day? I
No,
don't-
everything is 100% volunteer, but we do have personnel in the daytime, not as many as we have at night,
Right,
but we do have personnel to respond during the day.
okay. So they're pretty much all on call if something happens, emergencies happen.
That's right.
And I apologize if all of you know this, it's fascinating to me, so we might as well get a tiny little lesson while we're at it. So I'll never,
Well-
while Lily's here.
Wally, could you explain what's driving the need? You said in the future, there will be full-time paid personnel. What's driving the need for that?
Basically, everybody in the country is having trouble getting people to volunteer their time.
Oh,
We've got some young people that have come along in the past couple of years. They're the ones willing to go take the certification training. And luckily, they're the ones willing to come out and take the place of some of the older ones. But everybody is having recruitment issues, and especially for daytime coverage. And Hebron is a prime example. They've had to go to 2 shifts of coverage to be able to get their ambulance out the door. For the majority of the time, we can get the apparatus out day or night, but it does look down the road like there'll be a time that we'll have to hire people to man that ambulance.
I see. Thank you.
And that is something that's a really common point of discussion among town managers and administrators. It's something that's been discussed both through Council of Small Towns as well as Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Most towns are ending up having to go to either fully paid or part volunteer, part paid. And there's a lot of growing pains with that. The biggest issue has typically been staffing the ambulance, not necessarily staffing fire response. But you know what, 50 years ago was a 3-year waiting list to even get in to join the volunteer fire department here. Now it's a struggle, and there was a meeting last Sunday between the Board of Selectmen and the fire, you know, the fire chief and the officers to discuss, you know, what recruiting they can do to increase the number of membership, because the reality is very few people have the time to volunteer, and getting out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to rescue some leaky person on Route 6 who just wrecked his car and haul him into Hartford Hospital, that's a tough sell for most people. So it is a problem. It's a problem most towns face. Coventry's a professional fire department now, an ambulance. Hebron definitely is. I believe Bolton is starting to go to paid staff during the daytime. So this is happening everywhere. We're not alone. We're in the very fortunate position that we've been able to maintain an all volunteer force as long as we have. The other thing to keep in mind is the expenses here do not include the expenses for a lot of the ambulance related stuff. Because like most ambulance departments, we bill for those services, and we pay for the new ambulance and a lot of the equipment from that. So what you're seeing, what the town actually spends on the entire fire department is basically the same cost as one resident state trooper. That's not including the cost for capital items though, which is also, expensive.
Eric, is this something that in your town manager meetings, would it be, and I know that in emergencies, getting there the fastest to save lives and all that kind of thing is the most important, but has there been talk of regionalization with some of these towns? Is that even a thing? Is it
Well,
possible?
So we basically are already regionalized, and Wally can talk about that,
Mhm.
because the towns are all part of essentially a network of mutual aid. So we support other towns support us.
Good.
No one town has enough firefighting personnel and gear to handle a large incident or accident. Or if, for instance, you had 2 ambulance calls at the same time in town, because we only have 1 ambulance, 1 crew.
Mhm.
So we already do support each other.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Wally,
Yes.
how many calls do you think there are on average to a week? I mean, I know that's probably hard to,
It's a hard thing to say. We're averaging over 350 calls in a year.
okay.
The
that's
majority
good
of
to
those
know.
calls are ambulance calls.
Right,
And back to what Eric talked about, we have a strong mutual aid agreement with the surrounding towns and Talon County. So that there are resources available to us. If our ambulance is out or out of service for servicing,
mhm,
Columbia or Hebron or Coventry can respond to Andover. And again, under mutual aid, we respond out of town to other towns. So we all work together under the Talon County Mutual Aid System to help each other.
mhm.
So it isn't that it's a dire thing that if
Right.
someone's not available, you won't get service. It's just that it'll be coming from another town.
And another question, since we're talking about volunteerism, and just because I'm curious, and then my questions are probably done. Do the volunteers get any, I thought, Eric, are there any perks? Do they get anything from the town for their volunteer time or service? Was there tax break somewhere? Did I hear that? Am I making that up?
no, you're not. There is a stipend, um, essentially a tax abatement that
That's
are
it,
given
yeah.
to firefighters, depending, and it depends on 2 things. One, they have to respond to a high enough percentage of the calls during that year to qualify.
Okay,
So if you're not going to, if your pager rings and you're turning it off and you're not going,
Right.
you're not getting the stipend. And the stipend is based on years of service,
okay,
in qualification level.
thank you. So there's, yeah, there's steps to it, right, or whatever. Okay,
Correct. But currently, the maximum you can get is basically a $1,000 tax break.
okay,
I earned that by putting in 31 years of active service in the fire department before I retired. So I'm
I
one of those
definitely think you
recipients.
did. Thank you for all those years of service as a volunteer. No, I get it. And he just told us the maximum is 1,000 a year, so.
That's
No,
not a heck of a lot. It'd be my,
No,
No.
and that
No.
is something that's going to be actively a consideration by the Board
Mhm.
of Selectmen.
Right.
It would take a town ordinance to change,
Mhm.
but the state allows a much higher rebate to that. And while I don't think it's necessarily going to help with recruiting, I
Mhm.
do think it might help a little bit with retention.
Retaining,
Although I
absolutely.
honestly don't know. Most people join because they want to serve, not because they're getting a grand back a year, for going to 40 calls a year.
No,
you
but
know,
I'm glad they're getting something, so, no, I hear you. Something to
It,
think
it's
about in future.
it seems like it's kind of the one lever we have, though.
Yeah, right.
exactly.
Whether it works or not, we'll see. But if that's the one button we can press to try and
Absolutely.
push off this issue, then okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone else, go ahead, Kim.
Wally, the fundraisers that you do in the fire department, do they have a
Or
good,
sorry,
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, we can.
Do they have a good advantage to your budget? Do they take care of quite a bit of the budget and it's,
the
that-
fundraisers they use for things like buying uniforms and events that they hold for the fire department. They have a Christmas party every year for the members and their families. Again, it's another thank you that was done by the Fire Department Association. And these are where a lot of those funds are used. They do at times purchase equipment with money that they raise, and that equipment is then donated to the town to go on the town's capital. So there are items that they are purchasing throughout the year that do benefit the town, but they don't have a big impact on the budget per se.
Okay. Thank you.
And can I ask too, is Eric Ron or Wally, Ron Mike, who is he in the town? What is his title?
Ron Mike is the fire chief.
Thank you. That's what I thought. I didn't want to,
He's the
So is-
head of the volunteer fire department, and he is in command when they do an emergency response.
okay. And he's a non-paid person or does he?
That's correct.
Wow.
And he also lives in the town of Columbia, just over the town
Oh,
line. So
Mhm.
he does not receive the tax break that active members do.
Wow.
That's something else that may be addressed in the future by the selectmen.
No, it's good to know all this information so that those of us on the board can absorb it. Maybe others knew it. I didn't know all this, so thank you for explaining how it all goes.
Yep.
I don't have any other questions. I don't know if anybody else on the board has more questions for Wally.
I would only, and I don't know if this is something that can be done, but going forward, you know, as a one-line item for the fire department, it's nice to see this information that we have in front of us, but it would also be nice to see it in an actual budget format where we can see, you know, a year or two of history of what the costs have been, what we spent this year and what we are budgeting for next year. It just helps us really look at these line items and make a better decision overall.
I can get you the breakdown for this year, Bill, and I'll send it to Eric so he can pass it on to you people.
That's
Yep.
awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wally.
And
I would
if we
agree
keep
with that.
doing that,
Thank
we
you.
build it into our spreadsheet the way we build in the other department budgets, and it'll help
Right.
us see trends.
Yeah.
Obviously, this trend is up, but
Yeah.
But it's a good thing that we have that much new training that's needed. So that's a great
that
thing
is
too.
good.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I'm not surprised that turnout gear is high on the list here. You know, as one of the big things that they need. So
Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind too is that pretty much everything used for fire departments, you know, is regulated by NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association. So like everything has built-in age limits. Like you're allowed to use turnout gear for X number of years. You know,
Good
so
point.
they're building in a replacement schedule where they're replacing 1/10 of their turnout gear every year, essentially. So even though collectively, you know, they have, I actually have a spreadsheet on that somewhere from Ronnie about how much actual gear they have, but the answer is that they basically turn over 1/10 of that gear every year. Other things like hoses, those are required to be tested either annually or semi-annually. Wally, you can correct me.
Annual testing and a 20-year life expectancy, after which they are no longer tested and must be replaced.
Right,
Mm.
so,
So,
you know,
Eric,
we've had.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, I was gonna say, we've had years where we've had to replace a lot of hose, and we've had years where we've had to replace less hose. You know, they lay everything out and they pressure test them, and if they fail, you have no choice, you have to replace them. So,
Understood. That's a
Yeah.
good point, I guess. So seeing like Bill suggested and all of us would like just the trends, because maybe certain years, certain things get increased, certain don't, you know, and
Right.
we'll be able to see that, okay, just like in Public Works, all right, now this is the time for that. But that's awesome, Wally. Thank you again for joining us tonight and for going over this.
All
We
right, now we'll get
appreciate
that
it.
other document to Eric tomorrow.
Okay,
Thank you, Wally.
Yep.
sounds good. So now I'm gonna move down to, we didn't add anything else, right, Eric, that I'm not, it was just the fire. I don't wanna skip. So the
Correct.
next agenda item that we're going to touch on tonight, and Kim, just because you joined us a little bit late, we're gonna start on budget workshop, you know, number 3 with any points, but what I asked Eric is if he could be the person kind of controlling the screen, because I'm not gonna be updating things as we go. I'm gonna be jotting them in my green notebook because I just
Okay.
have notes there. I'll
Got it.
update the spreadsheet if there are any updates, and then, you know, do it that way.
Okay, sounds good.
So I thought how we can handle this. I know that last week I spoke at the end of the meeting. We had gone over every single line item. We've all made a few adjustments here and there. Gotten information on different things that could be increasing and, Eric, I know you said that, all right, so I'll finish that thought. So I thought tonight, if any of us had any items, which I will be proposing a few that I want to bring to the table, we could all speak our piece. We understand that, we're gonna say things, we're gonna make motions, we're gonna talk about it. But I wanna be, so we're gonna open the table to that. One of the items that Anne Creme talked on tonight, and that maybe we'll start there, is I'd like to get everyone's thoughts if they've had time to think about that, community center director too. I've had some thoughts myself. So could we go to that part, Eric, if you don't mind? I know I'm
Sure.
not gonna follow along. I hope you guys can deal with me just going to the important items. I'm gonna shut my
Yep,
camera so I
hang on.
can look really close at the screen. My eyes are not good with this stuff and I'm far
I think you
away
went
from
by it.
Did I
So
go
I'm
by
gonna
it?
have to
I
like,
thought
No,
you
I don't
did,
think
but
so.
okay, sorry. Well, Find Search will get us there if we need to.
Yeah,
and I think
I'll just
it's
start at
towards
the
the
top and
top,
scroll
right?
down.
Because I went back when I was looking.
I have it open too in separate format. I should be able to find it.
I feel like it's more towards the top because I had to kind of jot down a few of the things that I was gonna bring up and then I don't have to do all mine at first.
Right there, town planner. No, I'm sorry.
Nope.
Never mind.
That's different. Yep.
Yeah, never mind.
And maybe there we go,
Oh,
community.
there it
center.
is.
There's the whole
Yeah.
community
60,000.
center.
There it is. Yep. I remember that
Okay.
number.
So I know that when we were discussing that, we all had varying opinions and, well noted and made some good points. After thinking about this, and like Anne Creme, I know that this is going to be a new position. I'm, I hope that eventually it can lead into, the big position we hope it's going to be and take over things. I'm leaning in, I definitely don't think the salary should remain where the salary is. I mean, that's gonna be everybody's thought on that. I think this is more in the range. If we're going to keep it full-time, and I did some math today. Let me find my page on this. I'm afraid if we get it in as a full-time right away, I don't know if there's enough to keep it busy. If we do put it in as a full-time person, let me just find my notes. I would support it as a full-time position at the tone of starting at 50,000. If we're talking about, 35 to 40 hours a week, coming in, working with all the different commissions, departments, setting things up, taking a lot of things off the plate of some of the people that are doing it now. So I have that one thought. We could do that and then, or I've had members of the community talk to me, of course they do, and I appreciate that. Are we biting off too much too soon with putting a full-time person in there, getting a nice part-time person in there doing the learning and growing, figuring out the salary based on an hourly rate that we thought was, gonna do the job. It was pointed out to me that if we get a person in, and then we're married to full-time, it's hard to scale back rather than starting slower and building up. So I don't want to go on and on. I'll look back at my notes. Anyone have thoughts on that? Does anyone feel strong about keeping it full-time or anything of what I've just mentioned?
So this
Um,
was the Board of Selectmen's proposal, right? And,
Mhm.
notwithstanding, Anne obviously just indicated that, she thinks otherwise, but, given that I think it's a tough call because we're sort of throwing darts at a board here. We don't have this position in existence right now. This is all brand new. We have no track record to look at. So I was inclined to defer to the Board of Selectmen. That's my just start position. And it strikes me as something that if we get pushback on the budget at our budget meeting with the town, you know, that's a place we could look at. But for now, I was gonna be okay with leaving it. That's my take.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
I would
Whatever.
echo, I'm sorry. Can I?
Oh, go ahead, Bill. Yes,
you.
go ahead, Bill.
So-
Sorry, I'm not used to.
I also have a concern with that $60,000. I voiced it last week as well. I think we are jumping in pretty heavy with a $60,000 salary for, and this is where some of my thoughts come from, so you guys will understand. And if I get the person's title wrong, is it the treasurer that, Eric, you have to help me out here, that helps you with the budget and the finances and getting the audits all straightened out? Is that,
Yes.
what position is that?
Treasurer,
Treasurer. Okay, it seems like we're struggling there. We have a woman that's doing the job for us that doesn't really want to do it. And I look at, $60,000 and your note there, or whoever's note that is, high enough to coach an experienced person from another town. I would like to do that with the treasurer's position. I feel that the treasurer is and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend anybody, a far more important, in my mind, person than, rec and scheduling. And it's just like, we've had to dig ourselves out of a deep hole over many years with audits. And I think back to some past people that ran this town that got us like $780,000 in debt. And I just feel that financial is far more important, and that we should be trying to poach whether it's full-time or part-time, but a high quality with enough money to get a person that wants to do the job right, that our money be better spent there than in this rec community center position. So I'm not saying it's not important. I just think that, and I voiced my opinion about Carol Lee last week. She's constantly been, I don't know how long she's been with us, but thinks she's underpaid. And here's a new position that's to come in and right off the bat make more money than her. And I view a town clerk as a more important position than a community center, rec department center. So I'm not trying to knock the community center. I just think there are people that are more important to how this town is run than a community center, rec department center. And I think we should be putting more money into trying to find a full-time or part-time, whatever's needed, high quality treasurer. And that's where I would want to see more money put personally. So I'm in favor of cutting this back, whether it's to less money to start with or part-time to start with. But I have a problem with $60,000 out of the gate. So I'll shut up there.
And
Go ahead, Kim.
I would tend to agree with what Joanne said and potentially even reduce the position to 45,000 to start and take a look at it. And Bill, I completely agree with what you're saying with the finance positions. But for this particular position, I think 60,000 is high to start.
Thank you, Kim. And Bill, you did get my thoughts going. Sorry, are you done? Are you all set, Kim?
I am, yeah.
Okay. And we can look at the math either way. Like we've all said, I'm not opposed to if it is going to be a full-time person, because Eric's afraid we might. Thank you. I'm glad you both have those thoughts. I want to piggyback on what Bill said just because we talked about it. I feel like, Bill, I'm glad that they taught, and we don't need to go up there, but the treasurer, we're increasing quite a bit based on Cheryl's, decision and she knows, I trust her immensely. I've talked to her a few times. Like you said, she straightened out our situation. She's got the assistant treasurer in there that's doing a great job, from what everyone says, and I like her as a person. So she gave Eric this, I think it's a $30,000 increase. So that's one of my, did Cheryl say, because Cheryl feels confident, Bill, so I listened to her, that she has an idea of what our town needs to maintain, a $30,000 salary. And I did the math. So and I'm not picking it. I just like to know figures because we don't always, she had a
Sure.
certain number of hours that she thought should be committed to the town so that she could come in, review everything, keep it going, she's, you know, one of her charges was making that instructional binder of how to do things. She worked intensely, Eric knows, with the auditor. We did have a meeting the other night. Well, we can briefly touch on that. For things going forward, if we can, we'll find out from Eric, not like a lot, just that. Getting that binder together so that we know what to do when we hire a new treasurer and what has to be done and what the assistant treasurer has to do. Eric, what I was, you know, so this works out to, you know, $30,000 a year out of 52 weeks a year is $576 per week, just say. Did Cheryl think that it was about 10 hours per week needs to be devoted in the town to keep it running smoothly? I just, if we're gonna approve that bump, and we already did, and we all think she's worth it, and we think it's a very important position.
So we're paying Cheryl a flat rate of $150 an hour to work for the.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so thank you for
Oh.
the accounting world. So I'm just saying, but she definitely has, you know, she's been at our meetings. I just don't recall, and she, you know, I can even ask her, but is there, you know, because we want to make sure we're getting the next person that comes in. Cheryl's an expert at it, but did she say about how many hours a week? Because I feel like she's devoting about 5 hours a week to us now, but maybe I'm wrong.
I would say on average, probably less than that. I mean, honestly, Cheryl looked at the budget for the first time this year, a
Mhm,
couple of days ago.
right.
The way the system is now, I do all the budgeting for the year. She gets us through the audit, supports Christine or Chris a little bit. You know, we are running with very minimal financial support in this town in terms of the treasurer position.
And I feel like just,
So-
thank
so-
you.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well,
ahead,
I should
Bill.
say, so Eric, could you just tell us a little bit more of your thoughts? Like, what would you like to see in that position? And if you were to take a guess at it, like, what is needed?
I
as
mean,
far as
first of
hours?
all, the real problem is that there's a giant shortage of municipal finance officers. So all the towns are poaching from each other. Probably the closest in equivalency to Andover would be Columbia. I mean, they're somewhat bigger than us, but not hugely bigger than us.
Mhm.
Their finance officer, I think, makes around 130,000 a year, something like that.
Whoa.
That's on the real low end. I mean, you know, you could expect a bigger town's gonna be paying in the 160s today, like a Coventry.
And
you know.
Eric, we know that as far as big, but Cheryl had specific, you know, she knows what has to be done in the office, and I don't mean to interrupt. Obviously, we're not going to get a full-time person like that
No.
because Cheryl has even said to me, there's not a need, because she's like the executive person at the top overseeing all the little, I consider myself a worker bee, all that worker bee work that Chris is doing all the time and doing a great job at it. You know,
Sure.
So,
yeah.
so in your opinion though, Eric, I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel
You
again.
need to ask Cheryl, I think, because Cheryl,
Well, I'm asking Eric though, because I have
Okay.
him on the phone right now.
Sure,
So I would love to
sure.
hear what Eric has to say.
okay.
What,
I'm
in your
sorry.
opinion, do you think is needed?
Honestly, my approach has always been to go after a part-time employee, somebody that is an experienced municipal finance director. You know, I am still having kind of low-level conversations with one of the neighboring towns about potentially hiring one finance director to cover 2 towns. The problem is we're on QuickBooks, and there is since there's only a few towns in the state that runs QuickBooks, you know, while it's very easy to find a business-oriented CPA that's very conversant with QuickBooks, it's more difficult to find, you know, somebody on the municipal end willing to deal with that. So, I mean, really what we're looking at is either trying to hire a retired person that just wants a part-time job and wants to run a little town from the treasurer perspective, Or we're looking at, somebody who's running a big town and is willing to take Andover on the side. I mean, those are really, because we are not gonna pony up, there's no way we're gonna pony up what it takes to get a competent person. And every time we've tried to lowball this position, which is what's happened 3 times in a row before Cheryl, we ended up with a lot more problems than we solved. Because the reality is, if you're gonna pay, your top finance person 60 grand a year, as a full-time position, which is what we had at one time, you're not really hiring a good candidate. You're taking the first person you can find that's willing to take it for that salary. So, and you're right, we absolutely do not need a full-time person. Would I like more support than I have now? Absolutely. Would I like somebody else doing the budgeting? Yeah, absolutely. Should the finance director be on every board of finance meeting? Absolutely, and not me. That's their job. That's not really the town's administrator's job. I just do it because I don't have that support. And you need somebody at these meetings. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric. And I input my 2 cents because I've attended a lot of meetings where I've heard different people give, the experts, the auditor, and maybe an accounting person give their opinions too. So I get it. We'd all love to have a full-time everyone, but I'm glad that I agree with Bill. We just have to have a really good person in there. I want to swing positive a little. Hopefully we can find someone, Eric. You never know who's out there. That could be a retired person. And,
Sure.
Cheryl came on board and did a great job, and she gave us, since she did such a great job and put it all together, I do respect her opinion on what's needed. So I have no problem with raising that. I don't know how long she's going to be around. Okay, so thank you
So-
for that.
So,
Anybody else want to weigh in on? Oh, go ahead.
well, I'll let somebody else talk and then I'll come back. Does
Does
anybody
anyone
else?
else have an opinion on that? I can't see you. Go ahead, Bill. I think they're good.
Well, I guess, I forget, I don't know if we can go to that line item also, but what is in place for that position right now for next year? Has there been an increase proposed for next year?
Mhm.
Is it going to be enough to get a qualified person for the number of hours that we need? Again, I'm just trying to do the right thing for the town, and I see that position as something that needs more attention, in my opinion, than a community center. So I
Mhm.
just let them know what we're proposing for next year and how we're going to address the problems that we've been having with keeping a qualified person. And Eric, I think you've said in the past that she doesn't really want to do this anymore. So if that's true, how are we going to find the person that we need if we're not putting enough money in the budget for that position? So is that true? She doesn't really want to work anymore. She's doing us a favor. Is that kind of the
That's
position we're
why
in?
she upped it so much, and she's hanging on for us for right now. I mean, obviously Eric will answer, but she significantly increased it based on what she thought the needs of the town were. But
Okay, so it went from 15 to 30 then, is what you're saying then.
well, I mean, in the part, like you just heard, Eric, she only is seeing the books like less than, I knew at the beginning it was maybe a 5 hours a week, or maybe it's 5 hours a month. That's why I just think she should speak to us. I know she's gonna be back, just to really, like, especially since you brought it up tonight, Bill, maybe we can have her on the next meeting. Lay in the low, before we make our final decisions. If she's gonna say, we're a town that needs someone a lot more than her, and she'll let us know. And then you'll hear it
Well-
right from her mouth.
Yeah, but I mean, you listen to what Eric just said. I mean, he's doing the job of the treasurer by being on all these calls and doing all these budgets. It'd be nice if there was an actual financial person that was, and no, not
100.
you,
Yeah, 100.
no knock to Eric. I'm just saying, if we
Yeah.
actually had someone
Yeah.
who's,
Right.
training was to
I-
do this, or to be on these calls and to be
Yeah.
helping us through these budgets,
Mhm.
and taking some of this off of Eric and putting it on a person that's actually you know, I don't hate to,
You-
I don't want to say qualified, but someone that should be doing this.
No, I
So-
mean, and I think it's the way the town, sorry, Ken, just one last thing, because I have gone to all the things in the past and I hear it from all the different meetings. They've arranged our town manager in a different way than I ever would, you know, as someone that works in HR, so I couldn't agree with you more. I think Eric does and it's not up to me, I'm just a volunteer here. I mean, you know, we all have things we could do with our time, so, but I did take the time to listen to meetings and I mean, I think that's why they got the public works manager. In my opinion, I thought Eric should have been, I've said this since you brought it up, town manager, administrator at the top, overseeing all the offices so that they run smoothly. Having the financial person in like the J position on the next tier, you know, and then exactly, and that's what they tried to do when they had hired, I'm sorry, I mean, it's a public name, Sherry in the past, and they tried to combine the finance offices. You know, but making sure every single office runs smoothly. So I agree with you, but we can only, you know, I know it's the Board of Selectmen's call with what the duties are of each office. So go ahead, Kim.
I think I'm all set. I'm
Yeah.
good.
I mean, we'd all love to rearrange, but we have to go with what we work with and, you know, Eric does do a lot. And hopefully by hiring these other people for other offices, some of the stuff will go off of his plate. Yeah. But the finance person was never going to present the budget, but I think it's a great thing if they had always tasked Eric with it, and then if we had someone in the treasurer office, I agree, it could have been that person. But I know we could go on and on about the HR situation and the job sharing and the different ways that, you know, we'd love to rearrange things, but we're just tasked with the financial piece is what I've always been told, so maybe we should have Cheryl on a meeting just to briefly give us the overview. It's not our decision because the Board of Selectmen decides that, but I agree that the finance, you know, treasurer is such an important part. So, we'll get
I have-
back, go ahead.
Okay, this is for Eric. Are
Sorry,
there
I
any,
couldn't see you, Louise, I'm sorry. Go
that's
ahead.
okay, the hands up, but you can't see it.
I
a
can
yellow-
now.
Okay. Eric, are there any possibility of any grants out there to fund like a new position like that because of the new building?
Well, I mean, clearly whoever goes into that role of the senior center director takes over grant writing for everything related to senior transportation and senior issues. You know, that much is a given, because Kathy Palazzi's basically said she's quitting. Which, and I don't blame her, she's been doing it as a volunteer for many years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that hole needs to be filled. Sure, there's a lot of grants out there for senior stuff.
No, not for
No
senior
question.
staff, to fund a new position in a new building. Is there anything out there that maybe connected to the other grants that you've used for this building to fund an actual position?
No,
No,
not that I know of. I
okay,
mean, there are grants for senior stuff,
yeah,
you know, so, I mean, yes, that whoever takes over that position should be grant writing to get money for programming and doing a lot of the operations of that building. That would be an expectation of mine, that part of their job, you know, is to raise money. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You know,
okay.
but are they gonna raise their own salary? Well, I mean, make it $100 a pop to join the community center. You know, start charging the rec commissions and everybody that uses the field more. If you really want to make it pay for play, and that person is going to be overseeing that, you could generate their salary, but now you're just gonna be charging people more, which
Right.
may or may not be what you want to do.
Right. I do have one other question. What we did with Carol Lee's salary last year? I'm wondering whether we can do this, the same type of thing where we could maybe start this director off at 50 or 45 and have an extra 15,000 in there. I just don't know how you would measure whether that person would be getting that extra money or not.
I think my opinion, because it's such a new position to the town, I don't think it would, we did that with Carol because she came with that. I don't know if anyone took the time to read the information that I sent. I didn't hear back from anybody. I just kind of clarified what we had done last year in the 16 point something, which we knew she had been here for years and we worked together on that. I'm afraid if we have a brand new position, it's not really, I think we as the Board of Finance should just decide, because we're allowed to decide finance things, what we want to start it at. I mean, if the person comes in and, there's nothing against in another year, if it takes off and it's, I know the Board of Selectmen, like Eric said, is thinking it's going to create all kinds of money and, grant things. I think it takes a person a little bit of time if they're not a town resident to come in and learn the community, learn from those commissions, learn from a Kathy Palazzi, learn from everybody that's been doing things. And then, so I don't think it's inappropriate, like when you figure out a dollar amount, it's in, I think I had figured out if we kept it, we lowered the salary, because then we're not putting it like Bill and different people have mentioned, myself, at the level of the treasurer, the town clerk, that we feel is a little more important to the town and keeping things going right now. It can't grow into, if it's a big boom, does a great job and a big money maker for the town, and we want to retain someone, then you address it then. So I believe, yeah, when I was doing some math at the 50,000, it comes out to a $24 and something cent. It depends how long you're going to work with, how many hours a week. I don't want to get into the weeds with whatever, but I would be happy with reducing that as like a starting point.
We have to
If-
make a
Yeah.
motion and vote on that, Joanne? How's that work?
Right, I'm deciding in my head if I want to do the 45 that Kim said. Does anybody feel like just saying before I make the motion? Are you guys more in, go ahead, Brian?
I was gonna say maybe put 45 to the community center director and then maybe 15,000 more for the treasurer. I don't know, so that they're both more. I mean,
Mhm.
one's a little bit lower, but I don't know what the community center need is, so. Exactly, so I'd feel
I'm
comfortable
okay.
with 45 and adding the
I'm
other.
okay with that. I'm gonna make a motion that we hire a full-time, if you guys are with this, full-time, what are we calling it? Community.
Center,
Senior community
what's the name of that?
center director
Yeah.
for a salary of 45,000. I mean, they get all the 45,000. This. I'm making that motion.
I'll second the
Reducing
motion.
that. Okay. So we're open for discussion. Does anyone have any opinions or further talk on this matter?
So if we put it up to the town, they can only subtract, right? So they can't add. That's the only issue. I would say
Good
if it was,
point.
like really adamant about doing 60 grand as opposed to 45, I don't know. We might want to leave it high and then I don't know.
I definitely don't want to leave it 60. I mean, I don't want to make the motion for that. So I'd be willing to do, in case anyone takes the time to listen to our dialogue and talk, I'd be willing to amend, I'd be willing to amend my motion to, all right, let's do this. All right. I make the motion that we change the senior center, community center, full-time salary person for a salary up to 50,000. Can I word it like that, Eric?
I don't think so. You
You're
have to put a
amending
number.
your motion.
You
You're
can do
amending your
whatever you
motion.
want.
Yeah, and then I think just
You're
re-second
the
it.
Board of Finance. I
Thank
mean,
But
you
I don't think
can't,
I don't
you
Procedure.
can't require full-time versus part-time. But you get to set the number, so, and that'll
Oh.
dictate what the position is.
I don't think you can say up to though, Joanne. You
All
have to,
right.
you have to put a number in there. So
Then
you gotta pick a number.
honoring, oh, yep. So because of what Brian brought up, that no one's, yeah, I'm on the fence. I don't know. but let's-
I feel your pain. Do we want to amend to 50? I mean, look, it's $5,000. Obviously it seems like there's a majority on the board that wants to cut from 60. So 50 was, a
Mhm.
couple of people seemed comfortable at that level.
point.
You know, Brian's point's valid about the town meeting.
Mhm.
So, you know, do you want to amend to 50 and we'll resecond that, you know, and go
Yes.
from there?
Yep, so I'm gonna amend my meeting, based on everything that everyone's input, good point. Amending, I would like to make a motion to change the community center director salary to $50,000. Does anyone second it?
I'll second.
Anybody? There you go.
Knowing that we may have to address it again, depending on what happens. Okay, any further direction, any further discussion?
I think,
Go ahead.
think during the meeting where we have everybody sitting there listening to it, I think it might be advantageous for Eric to maybe mention what he said before about all those other concerns that you have, like the assistant and all that, and to see whether that might play in with reducing from 60 to 50 to maybe allow that in the future.
Right.
They have a good point too. We have our hearing next week as part of our, so we'll be able to get some community input there. So if we amend it, I'd like to have our meeting be productive. I'd like the motion to get voted on tonight. And then if we get more input from the community next week by showing up at our hearing, we might even amend it a little bit more, or,
Right, we have one more cut at this before we go to town
Right.
meeting, so.
forgetting that. So this isn't the final. So
Okay, so we have the second, the motion's on the floor.
any more discussion?
If we can wait till next week, should we like maybe wait till Mark's here, or does that matter?
Well, I feel like, well, you don't want to, this is such an important meeting. It's such an important time. I mean, he can make a motion Eric, he could make a motion next week to change it back if he feels strongly. Thank you, Rob. I know you know that too. So in my opinion, he's not here tonight. He forfeited his, thank you for that. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just a straight shooter. Like I put so much time, like you all do, that he can talk about it next week if he feels strongly about it. So can we take a vote?
Right, I think after our hearing, we have a meeting, we can,
Right, we
we
have
can
a
have the
meeting.
opportunity to make adjustments.
Yeah.
So that's always available, so.
Right. So we shouldn't be afraid to make a motion and pass it tonight. We can always
Right.
get another look at it later. So,
Exactly.
Agree.
I'm gonna call for a vote if everyone's ready for that. All those in
Yep.
favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. I see, I don't know if I'm supposed to speak for the minutes. I see Joanne, Bill, Louise in favor, Kim. So all those opposed? Sorry, Brian, I don't know which way you went. Anyone abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Rob, Brian, what are you doing? Sorry.
I'm gonna also abstain.
All right, so I believe I have the motion passing 4-0 and 2
Yep.
abstaining. Is that how I state that?
402, yeah.
Okay, so the motion passes. We are reducing, I'm gonna make my note, we're reducing that salary at this time to $50,000.
And you're not gonna reduce it on this budget here?
No, I am, but I'm gonna do that tomorrow, guys. I wanna kind of make my notes and I will do my edits tomorrow.
I mean,
Okay.
somebody just did it. Eric just did
Oh,
it.
unless
So-
Eric decided
Thank
to
you.
do it.
Yeah.
I think we
had-
Yeah, I just did it.
I
Yep,
think we should do it now, and that way there,
We-
it's clear that it was done as voted on, so.
Thank
given all
you.
the,
I just couldn't manipulate it all, guys, so I'm sorry, I'm not
Yeah,
an
he's got it.
expert at
Yeah,
these meetings
Not
yet.
a problem.
And Eric, do you want to highlight that?
Yeah,
do we
highlight
need
it
to
in some
highlight
way.
that so
Yes.
it's something that we
Possibly
know?
change the color of the font or
Yeah,
something.
Thank you.
or
Or
just
I
just
think he'll
blocks.
put it- he'll-
There
you
yeah,
go.
thank
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, so, we talked about the treasurer. I'm just gonna,
you want to go back to that part of the budget and look at it, or?
sure, we can, Eric, do you mind going back up there for a minute in case anyone wants to entertain any motions at this point? And also, Eric, do we think we could invite, Cheryl to the meeting next week? I don't know if she's available, but it would be awesome to hear from her.
You can invite her. I
Okay,
don't
I
know
will.
whether she'll attend or not, but I'll certainly invite her.
Thank you.
The only thing I think of with that, the only issue I see with that is, you know, she'd have to kind of sit through the presentation, I think. Before we could even get to her.
You know what
Right.
I'll do? I will reach out to her in an email and then
Yeah.
I will read the response because we've had dialogue in the past and she says it so succinctly. She tells us exactly what we need. And that's the only reason why I'm strong on it. Since she
An
cleared
email
us out.
statement
Yeah,
is fine by me. I mean,
Yep, I'm
get
fine
it,
with that.
get it in writing and circulate it, and that's fine.
perfect.
I'm sure she can put it together in a couple of sentences. So
Yeah.
I
Perfect.
think
and I'm
actually she
also-
would be available to be at the next one because she is back from Florida.
Mhm.
I think she's actually traveling today, so she should be back in state. So I think it's a lot more likely that she would be, and I think she was planning on coming back into the office next week to review accounts.
She had
Um,
mentioned to me in an email, Eric, that she was going to be doing that.
yeah,
So, not that,
Okay.
I mean, you should know. So that's perfect. Thank you for that. Does anyone want to look at that salary line there and make any suggestions at this point?
Since I just brought it up to start with, I will say that I did not recall that it had been increased by twice from 15 to 30,000. So
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable than I was previously. So I'm okay right now. It'd be great to hear from her or get that statement,
Mhm.
clarifying how many hours the job should be. Not her, but because I know she was
Moving
helping
forward.
out. But if we had a person that was doing his job when she left, what would that require to do the job right? And I would love to hear from her on that. So
yeah, and maybe that's next budget year's, you know, problem. And we
Yeah.
leave it for now. Yeah.
so I'm much more comfortable with the fact that we did double that salary already. So I appreciate it.
so when I first started working for the town, we had a 40-hour or a 34-hour a week treasurer and a 30-hour a week assistant treasurer.
Hmm.
And that was overstaffed, in truth. I think realistically, the assistant needs to be a full-time position. I personally think that's a 34 to 40 hour a week position, to stay caught up on everything. Personally, I think 1 full day a week is probably pretty close if you had somebody for the treasurer, if you had somebody that really knew what they were doing, and was on the top of their game. Maximum of 2 days a week in that slot. That would be my take on it. And that's kind of along the lines of where if we ended up going in with the neighboring town, that's roughly the breakout we would do. They would assume around 65% of the cost, and get 2/3 of the labor. We would get basically 1/3 of their time at roughly a third of the total. But if we were
Makes a lot
gonna
of
do
sense
that,
if we could swing it.
we would be
That'd be
going
great.
after an employee
Yeah.
making, 120 to 140,000 a year, but covering 2 towns. That would be
Gotcha.
my. Whether that
sounds-
goes anywhere or not,
Right.
don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. That's great.
Thanks, Eric. That goes in line with what Cheryl had said in the past too. I remember her talking to that. Eric, you had to I think I had jotted down something. And you did the calculations on the spreadsheet. I know that for the assistant treasurer, like you said, I know that's a very busy office. She keeps everything going. And now she has agreed to work the 33 hours a week. I know she's already in a union on contract. There's no problem there. But what was the percentage raise that, I should know this because I was on the committee. I just don't have the contract in front of me. What was their increase this year? I know it varied every year.
I don't know off the top of my head. I could pull up that contract and tell you.
Okay, but we're confident that the figures you're quoting us here are the correct, whatever and I'll look back too, but you feel like whatever raises were granted in the unions are represented on the spreadsheet?
Yes, correct. The
I just
only
want-
one that's a little bit questionable is MEIU, and that contract's it's a little funky because in that contract, we put in the contractual raises
Right.
for the 24-25 year. But
Mhm.
technically, the contract is up as of June 30th of this year. So there's a little bit of a question about whether that contract really applies to next year or whether we got to renegotiate prior to that.
Right. And usually I know we talked about it in the negotiations that when there's not a, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we represented the exact raises that are there. Like I said in the past, like say my own contract was up for negotiation, usually there's a flat line there because we don't know. If you've done the estimated based on what's been done in the past, it's fine. I mean, for the few people it involves. MEIU, is that the assessor and the assistant assessor? And there's
Correct.
one other
Tax
person.
collector.
Tax collector. Okay.
Yep.
All right, you know, so that I don't hear myself talk though, does anyone have any, I'm gonna have a few more, but does anyone have any specific items that, oh, since you're right there, sorry. Did everybody have a chance to look at what happened with the town clerk? So my thought in a nutshell, and then I'll open it to the floor. We gave her that big raise last year. I have the, which was good. Everybody ended up happy, I think. It ended up being a salary of 61,000 total. We divided it into the two wages based on the years of experience. It's just my thought that since it's her full salary, we probably should grant her, either we're gonna go with what the selectmen did on both things, because I feel like her full salary would have been the 61,000 from the prior year. So are we going to go with a 4% raise on both items because right now they are applying to the person that's in that job? Or do you want to go with the request of the 5%, sorry, 4% or 5%? Does anyone have a thought? Or are we just gonna leave it?
I'm okay with leaving it where it is.
Mhm. Anyone else have an opinion? And I'm sorry if I can't, I gotta scroll down. I can't see everybody on my,
We increased it last week, right? To the 5%.
so she requested the 5%. If it
Right.
went through standard, the Board of Selectmen would have given everybody that's not in a union the 4%.
4%, right, but we increased hers to 5%. I feel that we should keep it there.
Yeah, I'm fine with keeping it, but if we're going to keep it as it's her salary, I feel like we really need to increase both lines, even though we brought the other one down, because her salary was split. Does anyone, or Bill, you're saying you want to keep it split and just do how it is?
Oh, I'm just fine with the way it's
Yeah.
presented here.
I'm fine with the 5% too, and I just think if we're being, Kim, how do you feel on this? I know you have some HR experience or,
I think it's fine the way it is right now.
okay. All right, so let's leave that. If we circle, that's a small item, so let's leave it. So does anyone else have any items that they want to bring up before I bring up more?
Well, mine's at the end. Mine's all the way down at Capitol. So why don't you keep going?
All right, and they're not big ones on the way. Let me just look. Okay, all right, so sorry, Eric, can you go back up to the administrator line? Because I think that's where this position is. I've got to, thank you. I am. So my rationale for this, guys, I'm thinking a couple years ago, I'm gonna talk about this project manager thing. At this point, I am gonna make a motion in a few that we don't do that this year. I've been involved in a lot of meetings where we've brought on either additional employees or we've brought on, you know, we've hired more for Public Works. We've hired the town planner to hopefully take some of the burden away from Eric with the grants and different things and projects that he has. So I know that we have his admin assistant getting the $5,000 stipend, which I think is great to prepare packets and do what she does. I'm just not in favor. And I guess the reason I'm thinking about this, everyone, I guess I should have started out with is the overall budget of us increasing the spending by so much I'm just not in favor of. I know that there's areas where we're going to increase that need to in some of the funds, some of the things we talked about tonight. I know that I was voted onto this board for a reason, and I feel like the budgets are handed off to us, you know, with their highest capacity of what they're asking for, that they feel is reasonable within such a small town. And then it's our job to kind of dig into the weeds a little bit, not on every single thing. But to me, this is a want and not a need this year. I think that we have a lot of projects on the table that are moving along. And you know, I'm hoping with, you know, if like I said, that my stepping stone is like public works should run good with Jay as a high level person. If we get the treasurer's office in order and maybe Eric can take a little bit off of that. Again, I don't know how to explain myself. I'm not in favor of this position this year because we've added a lot of new positions recently. I can understand where I feel like Eric would have to spend a lot of, this is just me from going to, he would have to spend so much time explaining things to people that hopefully if he can get good help from his other positions in town, maybe he can be freed up to follow up on the projects. Thoughts?
So I'll speak. I'm totally in favor of it. I'm looking at the line above it and I see, you know, the admin assistant was 22,650 last year. It's down to 5,000. So, I mean, the whole line item is a 1% increase from 117,929 to 119. It's $1,000 increase overall for that total line item of town administration. And Eric's going to get the person that he needs to help really manage a lot of grant money that he brought into this town, like a lot of grants, and he can't even get to them right now because he's doing the treasurer's job being here tonight. He's got huge amounts of money that he's written grants for, and it's important that we capitalize on those grants, spend the money, and I think it's $15,000. It's not even $15,000. It's really free when you look at the fact that we went from 22,650 last year to 15,000 this year, or actually, if you add up the two lines, 20,000 this year. So there's no increase really here. It makes total sense to me to do this. So I'm in favor of the way it's laid out.
Okay, thank you.
Concur.
Bill.
I
Go
agree with that. I agree with
Yeah.
that because I thought that the admin assistant, the decrease there and the project manager, I thought that was a tandem thing. I thought that those go together. And you know, if you look at them holistically, then I think it makes sense. And I think if you zero out the project manager, then you know, and we also cut the assistant line, then aren't we actually reducing the support? So I don't think that's a great idea, and I think we should leave it.
Thank you, Rob. And my thought is not in, you know, I'm looking at ways we could reduce the overall budget because I'm just thinking of presenting, you know, really if we're looking realistically at how much spending we are doing for the town. And we can disagree, and I I love that. Like that's why we open up discussion. But I feel like this is a budget where people are bringing out that, you know, RAM is down. This is the time that we should, you know, pad some other lines. And I understand that logic, but I'm also thinking of the people that are on fixed incomes and looking for us to kind of, you know, people that put their support behind me to kind of look at things where we might be able to save certain years and spend other years. So I
Right.
was bringing that fact up, you know, I don't think the admin assistant had been acting in that role for the whole prior year anyways. I think she's been, you know, Eric has taken on some of those duties. So I appreciate your input on that. I understand that he's brought a lot of money into the town and all of that. I'm just looking of ways of some savings. Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts on it?
I agree with you, Joanne. I think that for this particular year, maybe we could hold off on this position. I do think it's important. I think Eric does need the help, but I think that there are so many expenses this year that potentially this one could just possibly wait. I don't like to say that, but maybe hold off on it.
So
Okay.
this year,
Okay, go
it
ahead.
took me just over 2 years to get an HVAC project from when the fire department requested it to when the contractor came here. We have a giant problem with the school. That's gonna chew up an awful lot of time on my part. If you're going to do it and you're gonna cut that, understand that, and we're gonna do more of what we're doing now, which is I have a bunch of grant money and I'm slowing the acquisition project for that grant. In fact, I deliberately didn't sign the paperwork for a $275,000 grant that we've had on the books for over 2 years because I knew I couldn't even get to that project. So now I'm pushing it and I'm hoping that I actually get to construction before we lose the grant. But I don't know that that's the case. I think I can make that. If I didn't, we would lose $275,000, in that grant. If we get the one for the improvement on Route 316, that's a $2.8 million grant. To be honest, if I look at a construction manager as a cheaper alternative to paying the town engineer to oversee stuff. Because right now we're on the hook for $195 an hour whenever the town engineer is doing it. So in my mind, that's money well spent, but if it gets cut, it gets cut. I'll deal with
Thank
it.
you, Eric. I'm just throwing out suggestions. I just put my due diligence in, so I hope that any of the suggestions that I make moving forward for the board, for you, for the townspeople, no one gets offended. I'm just trying to, so I appreciate the other opinions of the board. I thought it might take more of your time bringing a person on board, kind of bringing them up to speed. And if maybe some of the other duties that you were doing were taken off your plate, it would give you more time. I mean, you're explaining yourself. It's just an idea I have because I have a feeling, obviously people are going to go to town meetings and they're going to see a bottom line and, it's not a huge increase that we're asking for tax wise or mill rate wise, but I know what's behind the scenes, as far as the big, RAM is down, AES is up, the town is up over 600,000. So I'm just looking ways to minimize the hurt to the taxpayers of owning this, because having sat on this board for 3 years, once you commit to something, it's hard to, even if you have rational ideas, to ever decommit. So that's all. So thank you for that. I appreciate
I'm gonna go
it.
back to what Eric just said. There's a lot of grant money that could go to waste if we don't handle it right. And
Yeah,
I'm still
that's what
talking,
I'm saying. Point taken.
it's
You've
no-
all made a great
it's-
argument. I just brought
and
it to
it's
the
no
table for an
offense.
idea.
It's no offense, Joanne. It's not
Right.
offensive. What I'm saying is you have to look rationally at what he's proposing here. Rationally, there's no increase. It's a
Do
decrease.
I look like I'm
When you
being
look at
irrational, Bill?
excuse me,
You're
I think I'm
acting
trying to
like
talk.
I brought
Joanne,
up
I'm
a
trying to talk.
suggestion.
I'm trying to talk.
Oh,
You're looking at a
getting angry.
decrease
I'm
here.
not feeling comfortable at this. I love debate, but go ahead. I
I'm not
agree with
angry, but
all
you're
of you.
not letting me talk. Everybody
Oh,
lets you
sorry.
talk, but when somebody else is talking, that means you have to stop so other people can also talk. So that's where I'm getting angry. It's not that I'm angry about the item. Okay,
Got it.
it's less money than last year for those, when you look at those two positions, and it's money that we could lose that we've been granted if we don't do this. So it doesn't make any rational sense not to do this, but I'll drop it at that.
I was already ready to drop my suggestion. You guys all were compelling and good, so thank you. I'm just bringing things to the table. I'm fine with, so let's drop that. So I'm gonna open it to other people that have ideas. For a moment while I gather.
I'm
Okay.
feeling, I'm sorry, Rob.
No, Louise, go right ahead.
All right, this is the year that we had mentioned that we could sneak some things in. And I think this thing is really needed. This extra money is really needed. So, and the overall is very low as far as the impact to the what do you call it?
The
Bottom
overall
line.
budget.
Yeah, that. So I really feel that the people will probably approve something like this. And we're putting in things that we need to do because this is the year that everything else is kind of down.
I mean, we
So
should definitely, I think, keep track of this and see how it goes. But my hope is that sort of position pays for itself in the long run. That's certainly the rationale for it, and I like the idea. If it doesn't turn out that way, then I for one would be perfectly happy to revisit the issue going forward. But I think it's a good idea for this budget cycle. Let's see how it goes. See if it allows us to get more done and more grant money utilized. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, if it's really no change and we're just spending money on something for little benefit, then we should revisit it next year and talk about it again, provided of course it gets approved. So that's my take on it too. That's it. I think we've said our piece.
No, that's
Uh,
perfect.
I-
I think I'm ready to move on from this
Okay.
item. Like, it's
Okay.
15,000, it's not
Yeah.
very much. And
Right.
again, my overall job of being on the board is just, the people that supported me being on the board is trying to keep expenses down. I agree that this is one, if it's gonna do all those things, then I'm for it, it's okay. Just trying to find ways to save or things like that. So I'm ready to move on unless someone else has a comment on this item. Great, we're gonna move on from this item.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm gonna keep going and I definitely applaud Eric for all his efforts, and for things that are going in with the town and the things that he has to manage on a daily basis. So that's awesome. Let me see if I have any other quick ones on the way down to those funds and things of that nature.
Yeah, so just to put it in perspective, for one bridge project, which is Bunker Hill Bridge, if you look at what out of a total budget of $4.2 million, $440,000 of that is project management. So 10% of the cost of that project is the professional management for that, which is separate from the cost for the construction inspections or the design. So I guess what I'm saying is that's a very expensive. Typically on building projects, clerk of the works, hiring a clerk of the works tends to run around 5% of the project costs. So for the community center, we would have assumed if we hadn't done that in-house, we would have expected that to be at least $50,000 for us to hire somebody to do what Adrian started doing and I ended up doing for that building, which is the daily monitoring of the job site.
Mhm.
But that's easy, but only because it's next door.
Right, and again, we have a lot of things like you said, and I'm very aware that we have a lot of things going on at the same time, and we have the grants that you've gotten with the town garage thing, and then, the community center is the most visible. So I don't know the inner workings of who in each town, manages everything or public works and things. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So I'm getting the overall feel, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop, but I feel like maybe the board, and I don't mind saying this publicly because I do, is feeling like they're happy maybe with this overall budget. I mean, I'm still gonna bring up my couple of items, and then kind of let the town see where it goes. My only thought with what you said, Louise, is I feel like I see the hidden dollars and why it works that way. So I'm afraid for the town moving forward when RAM, we're married to some of this spending if we're gonna fund it at the same level. And, positions don't usually get cut, even if all your projects are done and the positions, are gonna stay there. That's a hard thing to do. So I get that. So I know where the hidden money is. It's the numbers work out the way they are because, RAM is down basically. The other thing is, let me look at my front page that I written down. and there's nothing wrong with that, if the town supports that, but I feel like our town is made up of a lot of senior citizens that are on fixed incomes too, so I'm just speaking for them. You know, AES is up a little, RAM is down significantly, the town is up $607,692 according to Eric's document, and we're putting in some fund balance too of 150. So thank you, Eric. So in trying to, it's not that this is a nice budget, like people are gonna, and maybe people that are wealthy or just doing fine aren't gonna mind that because it does look good. But the people that are trusting us to look at it and maybe find some savings somewhere, eventually it's gonna hit them. When all of this, when RAM goes back up too, basically, so. It's all a matter of thought,
Yep.
and a lot of you have voiced your opinions that you think this is the great year to do that, and I hear you. So,
If I could piggyback on that a little bit, you
Yes.
know, I mean, your point is strongest with operating budget stuff, like, you know, any salaries that we're adding, because salaries, of course, propagate out into benefits and things like that. So, you know, the community center director, you know, you've got a strong point there that we're adding that in, and then, you know, maybe we're not locked into it, but it kind of becomes a course of performance, and the next thing you know, you're 5 years
Mhm.
later and it's still there. You know, when I thought of this year of having an opportunity this year, maybe the next couple because of RAM, to put some money into some things, I was looking at the capital side. Uh,
We'll get there.
so you may not be pleased with this, but you know,
Really?
my thought was to look at the capital and actually ponder whether we should put more into some of our capital budget. You know, specifically, I had raised the Bridge and Culvert Fund last time. I don't. If nobody else is coming with me on this, I won't bother with it. I just the Bridge and Culvert thing is worrying me. You know, on a going forward basis, it's something that we've been talking about now for a little while, a year or two now, with the costs increasing pretty dramatically. And, you know, we are increasing. So there's no question. We're increasing at $75,000 this year over our usual 100,000. So we're already taking that into account. I was just wondering if it made sense to bump it a little more. Um, and the thing with the capital funds is, unlike a salaried position where benefits accrue and everything like that, it doesn't go on and on every year. You know, you can adjust it much more easily. You're not locking yourself in necessarily. You're really just saving money. Which is that was my thought. That was the only one I was going to raise. If anybody is coming with me on that, thinks maybe we could put a little more in there, great. If everybody thinks the 175 is fine, then, you know, I'll back off. That's fine. It's not, I don't think it's a huge deal one way or the other.
Rob, I'm glad you got to these because I know we want to discuss the funds as well. And like I said, I appreciate everyone's opinion. You know, all of us should talk to what we believe in. It's not personal at all. So it's just what we're trying to do. So, and we like to, you know, circling back to these funds. I'm only going to shut the camera off because I got to get closer to read the little script there. I am fine with your logic of keeping this. You make a good argument. I'll let other people speak if they want to add more or make motions. I'm fine with that. My thought on the funds was going to be, who knows how it would be received. I think I spoke to it last week in a preliminary kind of setting the tone for tonight. And I'm going to stay true to myself, you know, regardless of whatever's voted in at the end of the night. So I had thought, and however I also feel like on this board too, we do get it's kind of frowned upon when we want to reduce things too. So that's why I hesitate. I'm glad and I support even if we wanted to take, maybe next year we wanted to take a little bit away from a different fund, it's almost like so we can talk to that. And then my idea with this is if we were going to increase it, that I would probably put a motion out there to reduce the road funds a little bit since we had already gotten ahead of the game with 180,000. At the end of the night, if the board really wants to just rubber stamp this and send it, and I'm not opposed to it. This is not me being mad. This is listening to my fellow board members and hearing what you're all saying. That maybe you do want to rubber stamp this and put it out to the town to decide. I'm coming up with some suggestions, so that's all.
I don't
Anyone?
think anybody wants to rubber stamp this, Joanne. I think it's fine that you have other items that you want to go through, and we should definitely go through those. I don't think anybody here has said anything about rubber stamping anything. So I
Well,
definitely.
sorry
wanna
that I
do-
used that term, but.
All right, so I think we should listen to all your other
Okay,
thoughts that you want to go through. But right now we're talking about Rob's suggestion on the capital, and I just want to throw in a little support. And I don't know, I don't have a number in my head, but I do feel similar to Rob in two ways, that these costs are escalating. And to me, it's always better to be a little bit ahead of the game than trying to catch up down the road. So that's my thought there. And secondly, I'm thinking about the oil tank situation and the pipes at the high school, at the, I'm sorry, AES, the grammar school. These are big ticket items. These aren't little things. So we
No.
can try and cut the budget, but someday we're going to come to pay the piper. It's going to be a huge increase to cover the cost of these sewer pipes that are about to let go at the grammar school, of an oil tank that could start leaking any day, of culverts that costs are going up. So it's nice to trim budgets when you can, but I don't think it's a good time to trim budgets. It's my opinion. It's a time to take advantage of where we are with the RAM situation. And I just don't think it's a good time to be trying to cut too much when there are things coming down the pike that are going to really spike these budgets up. And it's going to be a lot harder for the town to swallow in the future. So I just am cautionary about cutting.
okay, go ahead,
too much.
Rob.
Can I just chime in on the tank thing? Eric and I had an exchange about the tank thing a little bit more, and I'm a lot less concerned, Bill.
Okay.
He found some of the paperwork. They were put in very recently. I think there was some confusion. Last time we were talking, it sounded like they were 20 years old or something. They're not. They're like 3 years old, and
What? Oh.
double wall tanks.
I
They're
wish you guys
double wall
shared that
tanks.
with us.
Yeah, they're double wall tanks. They gotta be fiberglass. I'm not at all I'm not freaked out at all about that anymore. I was very concerned when I thought the age was much more, and it was possible they could have been steel tanks. My fears there are allayed. So just on the tank issue, at least.
Thank you.
Overall mindset, I'm with you. The one thing, Joanne raised the road funds, and she has a point here where we backfilled that because of an overage last budget cycle, this year, where there was a over expenditure. So if there is a place to cut in capital, that's sort of the fair one to look at in my mind. So there's a point to be made there. We sort of did extra work. I think, my general feeling is like we still have plenty more, but I can understand that. We did kind of just sort of plug a hole, and we did it with fund money that we could have put somewhere else. And so then the question is just, how are we prioritizing? How are we on the roads versus how worried are we about bridge and culverts, for instance? We could reduce one and increase the other. Those are all valid possibilities.
And has there been any further update as far as the school with the so thank you, Rob, for that, because I would have been nice if someone told me that, because I'm losing
Sorry,
sleep
I
about
meant
that
to
oil
mention it.
tank. I've been losing sleep about that oil tank, so I'm glad to hear that. But
Sorry.
I guess the other thing that's big on my mind was the situation with the bathrooms and the sewage pipe at the grammar school. I mean, is that something that we're gonna have to tackle this year, next year? I mean, Eric, anybody, I'm just concerned about that. And that's a big bill.
Eric, do we have I know we have 100,000 in the fund that we're putting together for AES. And I agree with both points that Bill and Rob made. And I guess if we were afraid of those oil tanks, would this have been the year to shift some money out of funds to take care of that? If those are in an emergency situation, maybe shifting funds into, I don't know if that's the building maintenance fund or whatever I'm all about tackling the emergencies before they become huge problems. So Eric, like Bill asked for, do you have an update on that?
So two things, Rob. I think the tanks really are 20 years old.
Oh,
What
I
you
thought it was
saw from-
2021.
That was when I don't think so. 2021 was when I suggested that we need to be insuring the tanks. So that was
Oh, I
policy.
apologize, everyone. Okay, I
Not the
misunderstood that
tank.
form.
So I don't know, I know, and I'm pretty sure that they are about 20 years old because it was about then that the Department of Health made them move the well because they put the in-ground tanks in right by the existing well to the elementary school. Which the health department had some real issues with and made them relocate the well for the school a couple 100 feet away from the tank to provide an added margin of safety. But I mean, I know the fact that Chubbs is actually willing to insure the tank is a pretty good statement. Because they're pretty conservative about, and I know it took an awful lot of paperwork to get into that program. And I'm pretty sure they're requiring an annual inspection of that, of that tank. But I don't claim to have full details, but I am pretty sure they're about 20 years old.
Okay, so that's where I was confused. I think you showed me a form and I thought it said 2021, and that was for
Yeah.
the insurance purposes. Okay, my fault. So sorry, Bill. Now reversed. But what we had was a form. Was interesting. The form said they were double wall tanks, but under tank composition, nothing was checked. I don't know. Just from my experience, if it's double walled, it's almost certainly fiberglass. But I don't know if that's 100% because the form didn't say. If they're fiberglass tanks, they should last a whole lot differently than a steel tank. So I would, my concerns were allayed, but and we do have them insured, so that's good too. I don't think that's flashing red. Although, and then the only question is, what is the lifespan of a double wall fiberglass tank? I don't really know. All the ones I've seen in my career are steel ones that rusted. So, that's why they come to me. That's where an environmental claim comes from. So, that one I don't think is flashing red, but maybe bears a little further investigation just to make absolutely certain we understand what the lifespan of those things are, and what the plan is for them going forward. But I don't think we have an imminent issue there.
And the last thing was the pipes at the elementary school. Do we have anything further on that? Eric, I'm sorry.
Not really. I'm still, I got a couple names of MEPs, one of whom I've talked to, but I got the feeling the firm that our town engineer recommended, they're an MEP firm, but they're much more heavily weighted towards the electrical end of things and the HVAC than the plumbing. So I think I'm back looking for a different MEP to support the town. We did an extensive search of records here. We do not have anything. I have asked Steve, the custodian at AES, to see whether they have the original blueprints from the 40s, because the town does not. And that's obviously going to be a concern, because if we can't even hand over a set of schematics to the engineer, that's going to drive our costs up, because he's going to have to figure it out and diagram the whole thing out. So that's where we're at. And frankly, the school has not even voted yet that is their priority project. So
I
they're
mean, I
talking about
imagine it
maybe
will
doing
be,
it
but
at the upcoming Board of Ed meeting.
they probably, I mean, I assume it probably will be there, but yeah, they haven't done it yet. And they have about 200,000 left, if memory serves. So you could look at that and say we have a cumulative. No, I thought they had
No.
200K.
No,
It's
No.
100 something now, right, Eric?
It's dropped.
Okay.
just over
20.
100K.
Oh, just over 100. Maybe it was okay. I was thinking of the combined total. I apologize.
Well,
So
we're
if we
gonna
put
add
in
100.
100 and they have 100, then you got about 200. That's right. We talked
So
about
that's-
this at CIP and my memory is a little fuzzy because it's
There we
been a
go.
few
Correct.
months.
So we do have 200 if this budget goes through, because we're gonna add 100 to the 100 they have, and that would cover it if we need to do something.
Hopefully.
Eric, did
well-
they do a, oh, sorry, Rob.
No, that's it. That's all I was
Eric,
going to
did
say.
they do a small repair to get those bathrooms open, or are they still closed down?
They're closed.
Oh, no, they're fully closed.
Okay,
I mean, they
all
did
right.
a $30,000+ insurance claim to clean it up and to
Okay.
get all the sewage out of there. So
Okay.
that's what's driving up our insurance costs this year.
That was the
Yeah.
other thing. Okay.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
trying to
and
put a, right, the
they
curve.
sort of plugged it really, but you can't use the bathrooms.
Okay. All right.
No,
thanks.
yeah, there's 3 sets of bathrooms. There's a boys and a girls bathrooms, and then the teacher bathrooms in that original wing are off limits until the
Wow.
plumbing system is redone.
Yep.
That is a big deal. Like you said, the priorities of how the money's spent. Thank you for that, Eric. I guess, so, continuing on in this, I would be in favor, and I'm gonna put a motion out there. I don't know how it affects anything, but only because I feel like we're ahead of the game with the road work that we did because we transferred the money in. I'll put it out there and see what you all think. So I would like to reduce the road improvement fund there to a tune of 60,000 at this time, and that'll kind of help offset a little bit of what we're feeling in adding to the bridge and culvert. I make a motion to do that.
Wait, so
So
you want to,
it gets it to 350, Joanne? For this
So that
budget
would,
cycle?
yeah, I'm just trying to think of, so that
I
would
just want to
reduce
clarify.
that to
oh, so you want to
350.
reduce it by 60? I thought you said.
Yeah,
please.
reduce
Okay.
from 410 to
Reduce.
350 is
From
the motion.
410 to 350, only based on the rationale in case this meeting is taped, because I feel like we've already top loaded or front loaded some work that got done and then we paid for it so that's my rationale. Does anyone second that motion? I'm hearing none, so does that mean my motion fails? Is that the procedure?
Right.
It
It's
would
okay, I
be.
just don't know
It
procedure.
doesn't proceed.
could-
It doesn't proceed.
Thank you.
Somebody could second it for purposes of discussion, so you can at least have a
Well,
debate if you wanted to.
they
do that.
know that they could, I think, so I put it out there. So going once, going twice. Okay, motion, didn't make it, so does anyone have any other further discussion or talking points on any of those, funds?
So the other one, that I kind of brought up was the bridge and culvert. And Eric, we talked about this a little last meeting. I didn't make a motion then. I'm still not certain what I want to do here, what my real inclination is. We are increasing it by 75,000. I like that. I think that's a good thing. I'm just wondering if, bumping it a little more might even make sense. I guess looking at the projects coming down the road, is $25,000, one way or the other gonna really make a difference? Maybe we just leave it. I don't know. What do you have thoughts as to whether, if we put in 200 instead of 175, if that's gonna move the needle down the road at all, or?
Well, so let's take an extreme case. The town has, I think, 13 culverts that are relatively large. Okay, so let's say you wanted to replace all of them and you didn't have state assistance as your kind of total outlier case. You're looking at 2.5 million, between 2.5 million and 4 million, say, because a couple of them, like that Stone Arch culvert on Merritt Valley, that would be a stupidly expensive one to replace currently. Some other ones would be cheaper. So you can kind of work backwards and say, what is the expected lifespan of a bridge or a culvert, and when were most of these put in? So the vast majority of the ones we have are what are called squash metal pipes. So you basically take a round pipe and you squash it so the bottom is flatter. So you get more surface area down low. Those tend to have around a 30 to 50 year lifespan. And a lot of them are approaching that. So we know going forward that certainly over the next 20 years, we're going to replace a bunch of them. Currently, there are 3. There are 2 that are rated 4 and failing. One of them being the one Lake Road by Basola. That is the one that's in the state local bridge program now. One of the ones that is rated poor failing also is on Bear Swamp. That one's problematic because that one, there's no exit from there. So
Yeah.
if that one fails, you're looking at an emergency repair because you have people stranded. There's also one on Townsend that is definitely in the poor/failing. In fact, Linda Fish, who was on, just mentioned to me the other day that we're getting a sinkhole in the road again. So we'll be up patching that and dealing with that. So I think over the next 10 years, we're going to have a bunch of these that we're going to have to deal with. But the reality is, we're not going to pay for all of the cost of these. We're going to try to get them one by one in the state local bridge program, which at least gives us 50% of the cost of repairing it. And that's really the best funding mechanism for the medium-sized bridges. So if we do 175,000 the next 2 years, we have fully funded Lake Road at Basola. And that's good because that means we can do next summer as a construction season, split the costs over 2 fiscal years, we're done. The bridge after that, we will be starting to put money away from that in the 26-27 budget. Somewhere around 27-28, we're going to be able to free up all the money that is currently in the Bunker Hill Bridge Fund, because we will have completed Bunker Hill and we will have completed Long Hill. Those are both fully funded, but we have to pay for the actual work and then get reimbursed by the state and federal government. So the bottom line is, we should have that money available in about 4 years, between 4 and 5 years. So we will have a basically, I think 5 years from now, we can do another $2 million culvert and pay for it. So we'll get 2 of the big ones done. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot.
Okay,
That's
but
how I look.
bottom line, 175 this year, and if we could manage it again next year, you're comfortable with that, and then I'll leave it. I won't make a motion at all. I'm content.
Thank you, Eric and Rob. Does anyone else want to comment on the funds at all?
Nope.
Alrighty, let me just look through my notes and I just
So
want
I
to,
have one thing
Oh.
to say, and you're not going to change it, and I get that, and I'm not even asking you to. But typically, towns run contingency funds of somewhere between 1 and 2% of the total budget. Andover, on a $13 million budget, is running a $50,000 contingency fund, which is an awful lot less than that. If you would talk to the auditor, we should be putting, that number should be somewhere between 150 and about $250,000 for a town our size with our budget.
what's the balance on that now, Eric? I don't have my balance sheet in front of me.
I mean, currently in this budget, we've only spent
Yep.
a couple thousand out of contingency.
Yeah.
Contingency is not a capital fund.
Okay, so we don't
Right.
do it like
That's
that.
operating budget. Yeah,
Right.
Thank you, okay.
So, yeah,
we've gotten lucky basically so far. We've gotten away with it. Like I know exactly what you're saying, Eric. But somehow we've managed.
right. And the reality is, because we have a lot of money tied up in capital funds, I can shift money to cover most things. So I think we can continue to get away with it, but I would tell you as a Board of Finance that number has always been a very tight contingency number for a town to maintain. Being able to predict a budget to within less than 0.5% is not necessarily a easy thing.
Hey, we're just that good.
Eric, so does that money accrue? Eric?
It does not.
No, that's, yeah,
It
that's
doesn't
operating every
accrue?
year.
No,
Oh. Why
The
can't that be set up?
contingency fund it's like 50K slush fund each year, and sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't, sometimes we roll it back over, right? Eric?
you could potentially make it a capital fund. And I recommended that a couple of times to the Board of Finance in the past, but I didn't really have any takers on that.
What was the reason for saying no? To
I
educate
don't
us.
remember.
Yeah,
I honestly don't remember, Joanne.
thank you. I'm fine with it the way it is at this point. And like
Yeah.
you said, luckily we are funding these other funds. So if there ever was an emergency, like we've spoke of at different meetings, you could, we hope it never happens to take, especially certain ones, but there is money to take.
Well, and remember, we do always have a capital reserve of 10% of our total budget.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's not like we're
Right.
hopeless. It's just that when you start dipping into that, you know, that takes permission basically that takes town meetings and stuff like that.
So.
And that's
so
where we're earning our interest.
I'm just trying to understand further than Eric. So that's $50,000 contingency. What qualifies, I know what contingency is, but
Right.
if you don't spend it, it goes back to the taxpayer, right? Because you didn't spend it this
Correct.
year. So in my mind, why does it hurt to have a bigger contingency fund when it's not going to be spent unless there's an actual something that qualifies for, emergency contingency, whatever. And I don't know what parameters or what defines contingency as far as what qualifies under that budget line item. But if you're not spending that each year, then I don't understand the hurt with having a larger contingency fund and or making it a capital fund that accrues. But I guess that's another.
Yeah, I mean, we should maybe revisit the capital fund idea, Bill, and maybe we should put that on a future agenda. Like once we get through this budget, talk about it for next year. Maybe we should make it into a proper fund. I know in the past though, for instance, when we had that issue last time with the road work where we had the over expenditure,
Right.
we could not address that through contingency because there wasn't nearly enough money in there, right? So we ended up plugging the hole by moving fund money around.
But
So
we
there's an
also.
example.
So maybe if
Go
it
ahead, guys.
accrued over a 3-year period or a 4-year
Yeah.
period, and then we say we
Yep.
no longer fund it, we only replenish it, right? Kind of like your
Right.
Easy Pass, right? You keep $200,000. I'm just making up numbers or whatever Eric said, 200 or 400, whatever the number is. And once we get there, okay, we no longer fund that. But if we spent $30,000, then the next year you put $30,000 in there and you just replenish it to that level that Eric said is the right amount to have in a contingency fund. So each year we'd only be looking at, replenishing money that you spent. Otherwise, you don't spend it. You don't,
Right.
you don't.
In a
fund it
year
after-
where we barely touch it, we do nothing with it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe we should revisit that.
I think that's a good idea for the future, and I like it for a year where we're not always already increasing spending by a lot for the town. Because like Eric said, we have gotten by with what we do. And then we also have those other emergency things that we have as well. That would be my take on it. I wouldn't want to fund it anymore. We can certainly bring it up. Mark will be at the meeting next week and maybe have a history too, like Rob did. Seems like it's getting by fine because what we find out too is, don't forget, and I've been at Board of Selectmen meetings where different people want to buy things in this year of a budget that's already been passed. And then what they say is, well, how much do we have in contingency? Can we swing that?
Yeah.
So I want to, having witnessed that, we're going to get a lot of that. Hopefully there is criteria like Bill brought up that it's only in emergencies and everybody wants to have that contingency. But it sounds like he said we already do have some kind of other fund. I mean, I'm learning as I go too. I like to sink it all in too. So there is ways to get the money if there is an emergency that comes up and it's needed. Moving on, if everyone's good with the way the funds are looking, I'm ready to move on. And I just want to state for the record that I don't want you to all, I feel like choice of words is very important. And maybe I threw out a word that offended because Bill checked on it. I didn't mean you're all just rubber stamping it. That's a poor choice. I should have just said if because I know you all put a lot of thought, integrity, and give backup. That was just a quick word to say, meaning I don't know if I should keep spinning my wheels if everyone's in support of this. You know what I mean? When you're the one person that's trying to cut, or a couple of people have ideas, you just mean you understand that the majority already has decided that they're happy with this budget. So I just want to say that for the record, that I know that none of you are just rubber stamping it. We're all not here. We're all here doing our due diligence. So thank you for that. So for myself, I just have a question for Eric. It's not really another cut, but it just kind of rolls into I had brought up, can you go up to the senior line, Eric, please, if we're done with the funds? My eyes are weary. Let's see.
Means.
Just for
which-
clarification, I think senior citizens, I think what I'm gonna ask you about is,
Okay, so senior citizens, so, okay,
thank
so
you.
which part, the
S's.
regular
Well,
senior citizens or
If
trans?
you just go to the senior bunch of lines, I'll be able to pick it out.
Yep,
It's right there.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. I'm going to look up close, so we will not see me for a minute here.
Control scroll,
yeah.
control scroll. You can zoom in.
Okay, thank you. So just, for everybody's information, because, I had brought this up before, and these are all small items, but this was the line that I was talking about when I was talking about the stipend, Eric. Like, just, this is not asking to do anything with it, but when we had said we're bringing on another person to do some work for the community center, I know that there's someone at the town hall that gets this stipend as the resident services coordinator. I don't think we need to make up people's names, because I don't like to, this is salary for people or stuff. So when you do this stipend every year, because, well, first off, some of these items that the coordinator does, you had brought up, tell me those two compelling items that you said that this person takes care of in the town. Did you talk about eviction? Did you talk about, I apologize, I don't remember the kind of
so
that type of
that
items.
here, and I'll scroll down. So that person covers everything pretty much under the social services umbrella.
Mhm.
And then.
Wait, can you stay there
covers-
for a minute? Thank you. You know my
Sure.
eyes, so I'll be right there. And since clarification.
Right,
Okay, social services, mileage, obviously food and clothing, social services if they need services. Clearly, understanding that that's important to have a person or a phone number that they can call when they need that. Okay, thank you. And then I found it up under back up to the senior. Thank you.
so this is where it gets a little stupid, and it gets a little stupid from a perspective of our town ordinances, which is something we should change. And that is, we are required by law to have a municipal agent for the elderly. That is one of the job titles rolled into that stipend. However, our ordinance, when it passed, I suspect people in the town were pissed that the state made it a mandate for the towns to have this position. So they specified that that position would not be a salaried position. Well, I'm sorry, but if you want to hire somebody to be a municipal agent, for the elderly, there's some expectation that you're not necessarily going to hire a volunteer. So that person does a whole series of things. They act as the municipal agent. They deal with the renter's rebate. And part of the reason why it works in the office, and just to give you a little history, the
Can I
town
interrupt and I'm gonna listen, I promise.
Sure.
I don't want to drag, I appreciate everything you're gonna say, and I don't want you to, it is informational. And I'm not in criticism of it at all. We could have the shortened version of it just to understand, because I understand it's important to have the stipend. But I also thought my angle was, I thought some of the duties were gonna go to the coordinator, since we're gonna have that person, or the director. Thank you, Eric. All right, I'll shush. Continue.
So no, what that person is doing now does not really overlap with necessarily the job of the person that's going to run the community center and senior center. Nor do I think it really should.
And you made a compelling reason why, I definitely listened to you, I thought that hopefully, so when I broke down the salary of this particular stipend, and I'm not trying to be critical, I'm just trying to understand. It's a pretty big stipend for a person that works with stipends a lot. Now do this, and by theory in HR law, like a person that's doing a job and then they get this additional job. And I don't mind if you don't do it this way. They're supposed to do it on different hours. I understand that you can't get a body to come into the town hall, a whole nother full-time person for our small 3,000 residents. Is this a busy position? Does this social services manager get a lot of activity and a lot of need in our smaller
So-
towns? So,
It depends. I mean, it's seasonal.
mhm.
There are times when there's a bunch of work for that office and times when there's virtually nothing for that office.
Thank you.
So
No,
it's
that
hard-
answers it. And
Yeah.
so I'm not against having it. I only thought if some of the duties like senior transportation and things were gonna be handled, I was under the impression that one person did that with getting that stipend. So if we were giving some of the duties away, would it be reasonable? And again, I don't like to work with livelihood. It's just knowledge and we're adding positions and trying to get different positions here and there. Would it be logical to give some of the duties to the other person and then retain that person, give them a stipend, but this is kind of a high stipend as stipends go? I don't think you're gonna agree with me. So say what you think. You probably wouldn't want to. Is it
No, I
reasonable
mean,
to think
I
of-
think right now, if I have $50,000 to work with for a salary for a senior center, community center director,
Mhm.
I'm probably not gonna hire a full-time person anyway. So I think we're gonna be cutting back from that to begin with. Again, I think we would probably end up trying to find a retiree that used to do it, that wants to do it part-time, and go that. So no, I don't think you can put all the social services stuff on top of that.
No. Okay, thank you. Right. And not, those couple, again, only from being, not trying to, this is just my thoughts I was having tonight. This was my one night to present my things with things that we're bringing forward. Definitely not give it away. I just didn't know if it was a big need in our town. I definitely want to have the social services coordinator, maybe at a $3,000 stipend. Then we put some of the other money in the salary for the other one because they're taking over senior transportation and, the senior luncheons and all of that kind of thing. And so you would think you'd want to go, and that's not for me to decide at all. It's, I guess, for the selectmen to decide and yourself. I would have thought you could still hire a full-time, because full-time at the town hall here is a lot less than full-time out there. So full-time could, be whatever you wanted. It could be 34 hours, 35 hours. I would think you could do that. So you don't think $50,000 is enough in our
So
town?
here's what I think. You're asking somebody to walk in. And so right now we have one town administrator and one mid-level manager. The mid-level manager being Jay Tuttle, who's the public works supervisor.
Right.
Okay, there are no other middle managers. Adding a director would have added a second middle level manager, and you would have had one person that's now in charge of basically all things recreation, all things field, all things senior, and other than social services, and all things community director related. At the point where you drop the salary and you're under the point where you can hire an actual director, you know, frankly, you're just not gonna shift all those responsibilities to them. And you're hiring a worker bee, not, you know, not a director. And that's okay. If that's what we can afford, that's okay. We'll make it work. I would rather go then for a part-time person that actually has the knowledge and has done it, because I don't know how to run a senior center. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know how to run a community center. That's not a job I can do, and that's not a job we've ever done before. I know we're doing, not having a recreation director has hurt us badly, certainly. But yeah, so that's my take on it.
I appreciate, so what is your thought? You think you would give a part-time person the 50,000 and we would have given the full-time person 60,000? That might upset more people in the
I
town
don't,
hall.
you know, I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty clear looking at the director's salaries that if you're gonna go $50,000, you're not gonna be expecting to get somebody with experience. So you're either going to with somebody new, and you're gonna hope that eventually they can understand how to write grants, manage a center, manage people, manage programs, or you scale back the job expectations, but make it part-time. And I would probably, in truth, if we're scaling it back, what I'm going to go for is I'm going to go for somebody, I'm going to find myself a retired senior center director, and I'm going to get that up and running well. And then we're just going to fluff the rest of the stuff and get by however we can. That's, I mean, that's what I said to you before I would do if that's what happened.
But
and
you
that's
never
what-
know until you
That's what we
put.
can afford, that's what we can afford.
Yeah, go ahead. I feel like, I'd rather go, I understand, I don't think 50,000 for a town like ours is something to sneeze at. You never know who is going to be there. It's a small town, you work in the community, it's very small. I don't know how big of rec programs and, you know, things. I know the selectmen have big ideas and would love to make a lot of money from the rec in the fields, but I just think it should be managed, you know, fairly and rented out and organized. I don't, you know, until you try, you don't know. To go into it thinking you can't, you don't know. That's just my take on things, but I understand where you're coming from, but I feel like the grant writing point and trying to make money right away shouldn't be the focus. I feel like the people that waited for the building to be built so that they could have a community/senior center would be nice for them to use, and just organizing it so that there's programs for a senior and whatever we want to do, rather than looking at them to make money for the town too. Yeah, just my thought. So thank you for giving us the overview. I just thought that with working with stipends, it just seemed high for our small town. Again, I'm not opposed to it when you're like Bill had said before and made the good point, you know, with the admin assistant and the project manager. Yeah, we're combining that. So if we were gonna hire someone that's responsible, and if it's not too busy of a time, some of those duties could have went then, reduce a little bit of a stipend, because we're giving these stipends raises every year. And again, I analyze these things. I'm sure people aren't gonna be as opposed to it as I am. Anybody have a thought on what Eric has just said with now we might be getting a part-time person?
I
Or-
think the, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Go
Bill.
ahead.
All right.
For the 50,000, I mean, I'm,
I'm
Yeah,
not saying I'm gonna pay him 50,000, but I know at 50,000, I'm not competitive for a senior center director. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
oh,
Now-
thank you. Yeah.
That's, so the question becomes, where do we go from there? And you know, maybe we end up with 2 part-time people. I don't know. I mean, you know, that's a possibility.
Okay. Well, we had voted to have the salary. That was a big item for us tonight. So I assume that, yeah, I didn't know what your thought was. Thank you for clarifying. Right.
I just want to say that the grant writing is very important for that person to do, because you need to get the thing running and also to have to maintain it too. So that money will come in handy when other programs are added on. So I just don't know what responsibilities you would pull away from that person, reducing it down to a part-time person.
I would make it just focused on senior center, and I would ignore the rec commission and the community center portion. Is what I would do.
What about the grants, the grant writing?
We just
No?
probably wouldn't do it. I
Wow.
mean, I think you just,
Eric, why do we have to change the whole focus on 10,000? I don't, I get, you know, it, and again, that's not, I understand that's more of a selectman thing. But I
Right.
know that, you know, I know your thoughts, and we've met on different things before, so I know how you feel with salary, and I always
Right.
tell you, you're an employee-based manager. You're hired as the manager, but you're always presenting the employee side. So you're gonna do your job based on how you know, we made our decision tonight. I thank you
Sure.
for
yep,
letting us know. I still had envisioned maybe a full-time person, but it's not my decision to make, so. Does anyone
I
else
mean,
have
that
any?
just comes down to whether we actually can get an applicant, qualified applicant at that price level. Eric doesn't think so, but I guess we'll find out.
Right, that's how I
Right.
just look at things. See, I don't like to go into things so negative all the time, but I understand. There's the realism too, so we'll just have to see.
Does this have to go back to the Board of Selectmen because we're reducing it from a full-time to a part-time? Because they
We
approved a
didn't
full,
do that. We just
You're
reduced
not-
the salary line.
you
We're not doing
don't get a say in whether it's a full-time or a part-time position. As the Board of Finance, you set the line item,
right,
period.
okay,
Everything else is mine and the Board of Selectmen's responsibility to spend that money within the budget.
okay.
All right, well, at this point, I've exhausted all the ideas that I was gonna bring forth tonight. Did anybody else want to talk about any line items, or do they feel good at this point with what we have in front of us?
I'm good. I'm ready to adjourn.
I'm good.
Thank you. Kim? All set?
Thank you.
All right, and Brian, I can't see him on my thing, but,
I'm good, thank you.
okay, awesome.
Mm.
All right, then let me look at the agenda.
Okay,
Are
so
you-
this is the
That's
budget
it.
you want to bring to public hearing next week, correct? As it stands right now.
Right, because I think we voted that we were gonna have that first, right, in our regular meeting?
We always have the hearing and then we have a meeting after it, right?
Yep. Cause I think it falls on our regular monthly meeting, so we'll have the
We
hearing.
have flexibility in our agenda. We can add or detract or whatever. Yeah.
Eric, are we able to use our emergency system to kind of alert the town that we're having a budget hearing?
No. Emergency alert system?
Oh,
No.
not, sorry, the information.
Public alert system, yes.
I'm sorry, I'm just using all the
Yeah.
wrong words tonight. Bad.
Okay, no, I
I
mean.
need to
that-
go like to my room, but no, I'm just
Right.
kidding.
No, yeah,
Can
the
we
regular
advertise
alert
this a
system we
little
can put
better?
out the budget meeting.
Huh?
The regular alert system, we can put out the budget meeting. I don't think it'll do any good, but you can put it.
I
out.
know, we don't usually
We
get a lot
always
of.
try, but we should always try.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
if we could say we're having the budget hearing, you know, for the public to attend and give their input, or, because that's the thing that we have before we do our finalized, you know, thing. That would
It's
be
the last,
awesome.
it's the last opportunity for feedback before we actually take a budget to the town.
Correct.
Right. I
That
will
would be
try to
cool.
make it, guys. I may not be able to. I have to cover for my kids that night, so they can probably amuse themselves, but I'm a little touch and go. They're getting
Okay.
older now, so I can probably do a
Take-
meeting.
Thanks for letting us know. All
Well,
right,
Mark will
does,
be back, so
right. We think he'll be here next week.
I mean, it's not like we won't have a quorum or anything if I
Right,
can't.
right. No,
I
thanks
should be
for
able to
letting
make
us know. All right, if there's no further action, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move
make
to
a
adjourn.
Okay, Rob makes the motion, Bill seconds
Funny
the
on the spot.
motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night,
Okay, and
everyone.
I just
Hi.
sent you all the budget with the
Yeah,
revisions
neighbor.
that
What?
you made today.
Thanks.
Yep, great. The budget document with the changes, you said, Joanne. She'll
Yep,
send
that will be what goes to public hearing, which is scheduled next Wednesday, I believe.
Right, for public
Yes.
hearing, for opinions, because
Yep.
Mark still had, yep, that sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you
Okay.
for, we only made one correction, I think, right, Eric?
Yeah, we just ultimately made that one change, right?
The one change. Okay, all right.
All right,
Good
did
night,
we actually
everyone.
vote on the motion to adjourn? Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
sorry. Oh, yeah. Thank you, procedure. Everybody, yep. Aye.
Okay.
Favor,
Guys.
we all agree.
Cool.
All
Thanks,
right,
Eric. Just got the
see you
email.
Next week.
Take care.
Night.
Bye all.